Welcome or welcome back to my small corner of the internet. My name is Megan and I have an endless TBR. So I thought that I would come on this weekend and just chat a little bit about series. I've been tracking my reading on and off since 2016 is my oldest spreadsheet. So this is the 5th year that I'm tracking in sort of Google Sheets. And I have had my Goodreads account active since 2012, though I think there was some period of time where maybe I wasn't reading or I wasn't tracking it as regularly. So I have a lot of series that I've started, a lot of series that I've documented having started, and that I would like to continue or finish in some, I don't know that I can say reasonable amount of time at this point, but I'd like to be finished with some of these. So I've selected 10 series that I have started. I'll give you the date that I started them and sort of what my status is. And hopefully this will keep me accountable. Maybe I can pull it off of my shelf or get that last volume from the library and finish it up so I can give you my full thoughts. Although some of these series are quite old and maybe you don't even care. Maybe that's just the completionist in me. So the first one, and I'm very embarrassed about the first two on this list. The first one is the House of Night series by PC and Kristin Cast. I'm not sure why I have read all but one of the books in this series, but they are just something you can go in and devour. So I had in my mind at some point that I'd read these series and I'd buy the last one and that would be like the trophy. I own the last book in the series, which is titled Redeemed. I read the first book, Marked, all the way back in 2012. Which is just mind-boggling to me that I've had this series that it's sort of in progress for quite nearly a decade. And I am sick of it. So I plan to just take this book, sit down, hopefully I can get that out in a number of hours and be finished with that series. The next one that I'm also embarrassed about, but I don't think that it will be a matter of a single afternoon being able to finish up the last volume, is the Vampire Academy series. I probably read the first book, Vampire Academy, when the movie was coming out, because I was working at a movie theater at the time, and this sort of like angsty, steamy relationship between our main character and her teacher, which is a little bit weird, but the dynamic is a little bit different than student-teacher. So that relationship was very compelling. Again, I have the last book on my shelf. This is titled Last Sacrifice. We have gone to Russia. We have learned more about the world. And this is another series that I'd really just like to finish and be able to carry on with my day. Being that the last volume in this series is something like 600 pages. It'll take me a little while to get through that, but it'll be nice to check it off the list. We've got 2 series that I read the first volume in May of 2016. So this May will be 5 years since I have read the first book, and I have not yet continued, even though I really, really liked them and decided I'm going to buy the rest of the series so that I can read them all in a row. And I haven't done it. So my goal for these 2 series specifically is to read them by the end of May 2021. So that it'll be within 5 years. I probably have to go back and reread the first book. A lot of preface. The first series is ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I read the first one sort of as it was, I think, as it was being released. So that was in May 2016. I really, really liked it. And then the next year when A Court of Mist and Fury released, it blew up the internet. It blew up BookTube, which I was watching at the time. And I'm like, oh, I gotta get my hands on this. I'm gonna buy it. But we know my relationship with the library, so my library books kept kept getting precedence because, oh, they have due dates, and I own this book and I can read it whenever I want. That's a tidbit that goes on in my brain that you now have privy to, and should kind of keep that in the back of your brain. I have a really hard time reading books that I already own because I check out so much from the library. In any case, I now own the entire ACOTAR series, including number 4, the novella that nobody really liked. And they're staring at me. They're up on the top shelf because I have my books alphabetical, so it's sort of like one shelf is A through L, and the next shelf is M through Z. So they're just taunting me. I have the entire series. I'd like to read the series in its entirety. Hopefully that's before the new series starts. So we'll see. The other series that I would like to read by May is the Red Rising Trilogy. I also own, I think, the first 2 books in the continuation series, but I'm not as concerned about that for this particular goal in my mind. So I read Red Rising. I read the book Red Rising in May of 2016. And I said, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Let me buy the rest of the series as they're coming out in paperback. So one, I'd have to wait for the book to be released, and then I'd have to wait a year for us to get the paperback release. And now I have 5 unread books by the same author within the same series on my shelf. I don't feel as strongly about Red Rising, the need to reread the first book in the series. Hopefully I can get to those other 2 books in the trilogy, the original trilogy, by May 2016, and then I'll feel pretty accomplished. My manga series that I have on the list is Death Note, the story of which is by Tsugumi Ohba. This is a series that I have read from the library. We've had plenty of anime and the Netflix series that came out last year. I have 4 volumes remaining in this series, and I have them checked out from the library right now. So hopefully I can dedicate a couple of days that I can just finish out this series and have this story arc completed. I don't want to wait too much longer because the story honestly gets pretty convoluted and confusing if you wait too long in between installments. So the sooner I can get to these and finish out this whole arc, the better. Sorry for the angle change. Wanted to make sure I had enough charge on my phone/camera. We will move on straight away. The next series on the list is titled The Glamourist Histories series by Mary Robinette Kowal. She is likely more well known at this point for her Calculating Stars trilogy. This is a 5-book series based in Jane Austen's time period. And it's just sort of a reimagining of Jane Austen's world if we had the ability to use glamour magic to create art. Think the transformation scene in Beauty and the Beast, right? So the Beast is in this monstrous form, and all of a sudden magic takes over and he transforms into a man. So an actor on stage could have the glamour of the Beast like through this whole performance, and then suddenly the magic is removed, the glamour is removed to reveal the actor as the prince. Just as an example. So you get an idea of how the magic works. I read the first book, Shades of Milk and Honey, in November of 2016. And I read 4 out of the 5 books. I have the 5th book out of the library right now. So hopefully I can get that finished before my due date comes up. Next up is a book that I read first in January of 2018. Again, this sort of coincides with the movie release, but this is a Netflix movie release. So the series I'm talking about is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I read the first 2 books, I watched the first 2 movies, and now I hope to read the 3rd book before the next movie comes out, which is probably around Valentine's Day. So the last book is Always and Forever, Lara Jean. I listened to the first 2 books in the series, and I've been trying to get my hands on an audio copy from the library of Always and Forever, Lara Jean, and I keep coming up with so many issues. I borrowed the audiobook of this, what I thought was this book, just a couple of weeks prior, and it was in German. I studied German in high school, and I took 2 semesters of German in college. That's not enough to listen to an audiobook auf Deutsch. So, still on the hunt for that. I'm pretty sure there's likely a massive holds list now for that installment since the movie is coming out very soon. But I'd like to be finished with the series. Next up is the Winternight Trilogy by Katherine Arden. The first book in this series is The Bear and the Nightingale, which I had on my Kindle forever, and even more so than my owned books not taking precedence. I can't see my Kindle books. They're not staring at me saying, hey, why don't you go ahead and read it? I have a really hard time reaching for my Kindle books. I've gotten a lot better about it since I've engaged with NetGalley and the e-arcs. So I have my e-reader much more often and will open up a book that I own on there more frequently than previously. So it took me a really long time, much like that explanation, to start and then finish The Bear and the Nightingale. I wound up finishing this in June of 2019 and said, wow, this is really great. The whole series is complete. Why don't I continue? Haven't. I do have checked out from the library the second book, which is The Girl in the Tower. So again, hopefully I can get to this before I have to return it to the library without it being too overdue. 2 more series left. Number 1 is, the first one is the Daevabad Trilogy. This starts off with The City of Brass. This is by S.A. Chakraborty. I was just having a conversation with a real life friend from college who posted a review of this book on her personal Facebook. I think I read this in like completely the wrong atmosphere. So I was listening to this book. I apologize, I don't have the audiobook narrator in hand at this moment. So I was listening to this book on my 30-mile, 45-minute commute to work through the mountains. And it was just not the correct atmosphere for this particular story that takes place in the desert. It just wasn't working. So I didn't really click with the story. I don't think I got as invested as I could have. And now I've heard nothing but rave reviews about the trilogy overall. So I'd like to revisit the first book, reread that, and finish out the trilogy now that that's available. And the last book on the list is a book I own, or a trilogy that I own in its entirety, although the author has continued with follow-up series in the same world. So this is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I read The Final Empire in May of last year for a Tome Topple readathon. That was the first Tome Topple I had done. I was super successful. And it was also in May of 2020. So I had more time on my hands than I would in like any other circumstance. I don't feel like I need to give a synopsis of this book. It is all over BookTube and all over the internet. So I read the first book in the trilogy and would like to read the other 2 likely by the end of the year, because remember I have 2 other series that I'd like to finish by May of this year. So those are 10 series that I'd like to complete in, I guess, the somewhat near future. These are series that I will have at front of mind in order to move through them and hopefully be finished with them relatively soon. I'd like to know in the comments what your stance on series are. Are you a back-to-back series reader, like you've got to have them all on your shelf and then you just marathon them? Do you read them as they come out? What are your favorite series? If you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content. I'm a big reading vlogger, so you'll see those on my channel. And I did also talk about a couple of other series that I'd like to read in 2020 in my New Year's book tag, so I will link that maybe in the card and down below, definitely in the description box. So I look forward to our conversations. I'll see you next time. Bye.